what is just this hype nonsense of like people overblowing it, like saying like design is killed, or like this just ruined this industry, like completely gone, obsolete.
You got to go down to the pits to only then do you recognize like, wait, okay, no, it's not all going away. Everything I hear isn't true. Trying to figure out, okay, how can I use it? What restrictions are placed upon me as an in-house landman or whatever? And once we understand a capability, like how do I deploy that? How do I get my team to understand that?
The way that you treat it is not like you treat a tool. It's more of like an employee. You have to start focusing on your judgment. That's going to be the most important thing.
You have to be deliberate about your development of your talent. In the next 2 years, there's going to be like this big inflection point where we've got to decide what are we going to be comfortable with and what are we not.
Land insights, market trends, industry experts. Welcome to the Land Department Podcast, the state of land and energy as we see it.
Brent, where the hell are we taking this one today?
Dude, it's freestyle day, dude. A, we recognize that we're not good at scheduling, and B,
Happens.
we're winging it here.
Yeah. Much like most people are winging it with AI, if we're being honest, right?
Yeah, boy, every day I'm winging it with it. I'm over here just trying to sound like I know what I'm talking about, but it's I don't know if it's controlling me or I'm controlling it.
Yeah.
At the time. I do know that I don't know anything. And my LinkedIn feed and my YouTube feed confirm that. And don't even talk about Twitter because it makes me feel like an absolute idiot.
It's I mean, the hard thing is you have to have a really good filter of like, what is just this hype nonsense of like people overblowing it, like saying like design is killed, or like this just ruined this industry, like completely gone, obsolete. It's like, no.
Yep.
You know, what's hype
not.
versus what's like actual reality.
Yeah. And I feel like you got to go down to the pits to only then do you recognize like, wait, okay, no, it's not all going away. Everything I hear isn't true. But then you have to kind of set yourself in the reality that things are going to be different and how we're going to respond to that. And then you can kind of get back up above the surface, it feels like, and like, okay, how am I going to systematically approach this as a business leader, as an individual contributor? Like, okay, how do I go about this? And so that's all the questions. I mean, it's shocking. I was just out in Midland last week for the PBLA. Landman spring break was great. Everybody was happy. We got $100 oil, man. Like, you want to go somewhere and be happy? Go to Midland when you got $90 oil. I mean, life is great. Life is great out there.
Great.
But talked a lot about business, talked a lot about just industry and what's going on. Although, man, every broker I talk to is busy as can be. Every operator that I visited with, a lot of great contacts that I got to see, longtime friends, longtime clients. They're all, man, there's tons of stuff going on. Get out here and meet everybody, see people. I mean, there's opportunity out there. But everybody, I had a lot of AI conversations.
What are they asking? Like, what does that conversation look like?
Yeah. So it's like, how are you guys, what are you guys doing? I guess maybe we talk a lot about technology and systems and things that we do at the company. So I guess people are curious as to what we're doing there. And of course, the podcast and the guests and conversations that we're having. But it all boils, like what I've really, the common theme, especially with clients, was, they're all trying to figure out, okay, how can I use it? What restrictions are placed upon me as an in-house landman or whatever. And then once we understand a capability, like how do I deploy that? How do I get my team to understand that? How do I train my team? And there's a lot of that. It's that knowledge gap that it's just this weird thing. We got a bunch of 15, 20-year landmen trying to embrace and understand this like massive change in technology.
Well, and I think something that most companies probably already recognize is this isn't something you can just avoid. It's kind of like saying Google search. It's becoming Google search is ingrained in everything that we do, right? If I ask you to do your job, I'm assuming you know how to Google something, right? Like if you can't use Google, we're gonna have a hard time, right?
You could still probably be a field landman.
Maybe. I mean,
For like another
think about the
week or two.
GPS, like using Google Maps just to GPS, like it's in everything. It's ingrained. It's just second nature.
Yeah.
And it's becoming that way with AI. And if you're not giving an AI policy, if you're not providing AI tools, if you're not providing AI training, they're going and figuring out, they're uploading stuff to ChatGPT that you don't even know about. They're
Yeah.
coming up with workarounds and sending emails with AI generated content and all that kind of stuff. And so if you're not actively giving guidance and training and tools and resources and policies, you're not
It's the Wild
controlling
West.
anything. It's the Wild
Yeah.
West.
I mean, and then what you end up with is, even within your own team or your own organization, you end up with 6 different paths. Somebody hears about something somebody's doing and they start using that, and then it just starts to permeate. And yeah, maybe that's there's a place for that, like that, go forth
Exploration.
and discover, and explore, and like, what can you do? How can we apply this to our day-to-day workflow or whatever? But you can't just cut people loose and not be cognizant of it, because, to your point, I mean, God, what are you going to uncover? What are you going to expose? And then you start to segregate. You're not a unit anymore. You're a bunch of people doing things their own way, and then that just spirals into a complicated mess. And so we've been living with that. We've at Dudley Land. That's been a big. We had a discovery phase. We've done a lot of trainings, a lot of learnings. Through that, trying to identify who the early adopters are. Really work with those people to then start to tackle challenges within the company in a way that's controlled and collaborative and aligned. But at the same time, you can go through this discovery, and then you got to stop and say, well, okay, what do my 100 MSAs say about what can I do? Like, what information can I put in AI? And the fact is, most MSAs that I know that Dudley Land works under, and a lot of companies work under, don't say anything about AI. There's a cyber policy, there's confidentiality, there's all those things, but there's no certainty as to the use of AI, as to like what's actually being confidential if I'm taking that and uploading it. So AI policies come into play. I mean, I'm working on that this week, and we were talking about it earlier. Like, it's a red, yellow, green is kind of the simplest thing to digest. But, if you're going to put that out to a company, and red's pretty easy, right? Okay, don't upload social security numbers, like the basics,
Right.
Green's pretty straightforward. Yeah, help it QC a letter you're drafting, or an email, or help recollect, information from a meeting that you transcribed and summarize things. Like, that's easy. It's the yellow that's like, well, I don't know. It's the in between where you're telling your team to seek guidance, but then what guidance do you give them? Can I
it's
upload
almost
an
like you need
ownership
it.
report?
You just have to basically define, you need the red, yellow, green, but you also need a gray. And you need to say, hey, like,
Brown.
this is a gray area. Brown.
This is brown.
Yeah. So you can see guidance, but I don't know. I don't know who you're getting it from. Yeah. I can't guide you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I think you have to come up with a policy, and it's even things like, hey, internal communication is different than I would personally. I think client communication and the drafting the email stuff, that's yellow, and it's sometimes even red. You do not put something into ChatGPT, copy and paste it, and send it to the client. No. Because the amount of hallucinations, the amount of like wrong context and things that it just doesn't get right, and misspelling of a name or an entity because it doesn't know, like, it happens.
Especially if you haven't done the work, like setting the foundation for, whatever platform you're using. Like, this is who I am. This is my role. This is my profession. This is the context of the conversation. Like, a lot of people don't really understand how much groundwork you need to do to be able to get the value out of, whatever platform you're using to help with that. And I can see it, you were a big part in helping us with establishing like some baseline definitions and skills and those things, right? And I can see every day it gets better. I can see model to model how it reflects back better
Oh, for sure.
on who we are and what we've done, and then that context that it builds over time.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole copy and paste into an email, that's no good.
But you have to provide that guidance as a leader and as an organization of like, hey, you can't just do that. If we start seeing emails go out that are AI slop, that's cause for termination, because that's your reputation, when you're dealing with a client. And nothing's worse. It's sometimes it's not even the spelling errors, Brent. Nothing's worse than someone sending this massive document that is a bunch of fluff. And it's thorough, it's really cool, but the person didn't even read it before they sent it. And it's like, I'm not reading emails for leisure because I enjoy seeing fluff and going through. I want high signals. I want to know what's the decision we're making.
Cut to the
and
chase.
why are we making it? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and when people copy and paste stuff, they ignore that all the time. And it just, what ends up happening is they take that long response. They say, hey, what did he say? They put it into AI. They say, hey, tell me the main point here, because I'm not going to read that email.
Hallucination. You got to hallucinate on a hallucinate.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It is, man. It's there's a lot there. It's like we talk about all the time. It's the hammer. Who's the best with using the hammer? It's a tool. Yeah. You got to recognize that, and you got to make sure that it doesn't replace your identity and your skill set and who you are, especially in the land profession. I mean, this is a relationship and a reputation business. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's going to go away. I don't think it ever will. Some of the work will go away, but man, especially on the vendor service side, the trust and the repeat business and the growth and your opportunities you're going to have are built on that reputation, your ability to articulate the situation, to give guidance, to push back, right? Mm-hmm. And man, if you outsource that, well, then that's not you anymore. And it doesn't sound genuine, and they don't really get the feel for who you are. And you're not going to build that connection. So it's...
Yeah. And I think we were talking about this beforehand. It is a tool, 100%. But the way that you treat it is not like you treat a tool. It's more of like an employee. And that's where people have kind of a challenge with it. And maybe I want to hear from your perspective, because we've done a lot of different discussions and trainings on AI. And more recently, especially since like December, January, everyone's been experiencing more of the agentic AI, not just like this conversational AI. What is that like from your perspective? What are you seeing that's different that maybe you can share of like, oh, it's like doing things, not just like talking to me?
Well, it's personally, it's eye-opening, right? It's like, we try to go about it with the problems that we're trying to solve with, constraint-based thinking. That's the big thought process. Okay, what is our constraint? How can we solve that? And oftentimes in the land business and in, a company like ours, it's time spent pounding keys or performing a function, in front of a computer pulling information. And you see, like, there's two things, like, we're trying to develop things that help us in our day-to-day, but then there's a whole other service side of the industry that's trying to run title and, query documents from a website. It's tied to, this, that, and the other. And you see it every day. These companies are really pushing the envelope to outsource some of that search. And it's kind of core to what the Landman does. So in the next 2 years, there's going to be like this big decision point, this big inflection point where we've got to decide, what are we going to be comfortable with and what are we not? And what are we going to question? And how do you trust but verify, what an AI or an agentic, agent did that we would traditionally have a landman do, in person. And, how do you supervise that? How do you guide it? How do you quality control check it? I mean, what are you willing to do? How much are you willing to rely on that? Frankly, what's the pricing? What's the cost structure there? What do we do as a profession to kind of address that? I mean, you think of things like surveying, right? surveyors used to pull chains, chain to chain to chain, and then you get to a corner and then you nail a stake in the ground. And then it progressed on and on where they're looking, you got a guy out there and he's got a GPS and he's checking a corner and all that. Well, now they're flying things with drones and doing a lot of this work, automated type work, but someone still has to sign off on it, a licensed surveyor, right? And, we ask ourselves, is that where the land profession is going? Or landmen going to be licensed now? And is that how you protect the integrity of the professional? Somebody has to sign off on that, and how does that work? And it's a difficult question, to ask and to answer, really.
I mean, that's the only thing that you think about, like attorneys, for example, they're the ones signing off on all of this stuff because they've got their JD or whatever it is, and they're putting their bar license on the line by signing off on it. And there's not anything that exists like that, which there's benefits. There have been a lot of benefits for a long time to not having that in place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But when you start seeing different threats to the industry, you have to consider some of the things that previously used to be the preference, maybe no longer are the preference.
I mean, the difficult thing is you call brokerage company X and say, I need title done on these 6 sections. And broker company X does whatever they do to give you desired results, right? That's the whole reason you outsource it. You don't control that process. You're not really involved in that process. You just know that a run sheet shows up, right? And then it goes to an attorney. And there's a disclaimer and a qualifier in that cover letter of your run sheet, right? You're disclaiming, I did this, and this to come up with these documents. Well, at some point, where does an attorney say, like, hey, I'm opining as to these documents, but it's not worth the paper is written on because, maybe they used an agent, and to do that. And did they properly disclaim it in the run sheet or not? It's like you're dealing with a bunch of independents. And who's to say that field landman isn't subscribing to one of these platforms in the future, for $100 a month to do their work for them, and they're doing it for 6 people. But they're putting their name on that disclaimer.
It's happening right now. It's already happening.
It is. And
I'm not at scale, but there's a landman out there that's doing 6 different jobs and is, crawling websites and searching, doing data entry and all this kind of stuff and grabbing it and then reviewing it and giving it to someone. It has to be happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the old 2 days a day. I'm working 2 days a day. But there's a whole another thing about that with pay and landman day rates. I mean, people have to live, right?
Yeah.
And it's what you get. A plumber does the same thing. They may be working 2 or 3 jobs a day, and you pay the price for swapping out a hot water heater, whether it takes them 1 hour or 6.
Right.
And so there's just going to be an evolution, I think. And it's a super difficult thing. I mean, you've got hundreds of different shops in our space, brokerage companies. And we've done the research. I mean, we stopped at like 400 something different, companies that outsource land work. And the challenge is it's like almost the market has to evolve, and you got to have people out there that say, okay, we're not billing this way now, we're billing that way. We're billing by the job. We're billing, whatever it might be. And you got to have a customer base that supports that. And then maybe in time things evolve, and now you have a new way of going about this. But that's all the things we're trying to figure out. It's like, what's it going to be? Nobody knows. But you have to just keep pushing and trying to do the best you can to be good stewards of the technology and try to retain and maintain what's really important about a landman and what the real value is and what's kind of sacred, for lack of a better term, to the profession. And you got to maintain the integrity of the profession. And then let supply and demand take you where it takes you.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking about what are the effects. You have these agents now that are going and helping with every aspect of the landman job, where now the entry level work You still need the licensed landman, right? You still need the guy that, and I know that we don't have that yet, but just in the future, right? Licensed landman has to sign off on it. Well, they have the judgment, the experience, the knowledge to be able to sign off on it. They know what's right, what's wrong. They know when to push back, all those different things. Well, they gained that from being out in the field, from doing the entry level work of going into the courthouse, talking and finding the documents, all the different things, right? Doing the negotiations, all the lease work, title work. But now they can do some of just that with an agent, that they don't need the entry level person anymore to go and do that. Well, that's great. We've got the 20-year landman who's wonderful at signing off and doing all that stuff. But in 10 years, that's a 30-year landman who may be out. And where is the 10-year landman who got that experience to be able to now sign off on things, if we're just giving that all to agents? And I think that's one of the things people talk about. AI is going to take over people's jobs, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of debate about that. But I think what's going to almost certainly happen is that there will not be as many opportunities for the younger generation to get into the industry, because it's going to be so much easier to just use an agent to do some of that work that the entry level would easily come into. And so companies are going to, and this isn't just specific to land, this is every industry. Companies are going to have to be very particular about guiding younger generation into roles that aren't traditional, that aren't what entry level used to be, and figuring out ways to get them the experience and the knowledge so that they have a workforce going forward, or else that's how AI will take over everything.
That's kind of the feeling that I have. You have to be deliberate about your development of your talent. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I was referring to earlier. Like, you go down into the pit, like, what are we going to do? And then you come out and say, well, damn it, I'm not going to let it happen. I have to renew my commitment to the profession. And as a company, we have to be deliberate about, and as an industry, we have to be deliberate about the cultivation of that talent, and push back to a certain extent of like, okay, we're going to utilize these things, but you still have to maintain the integrity of what we do. And you have to learn, and you have to work through that process. And I think we're going to be, there's some outliers. There's a lot of very tech forward people in the industry. They're trying to develop these tools. But the fact is, a big percentage of the industry is still that seasoned landman, right? That's going to do it the traditional way, that knows better than to trust outsourcing that stuff. It's like, well, I'm not going to put my name on that. I didn't do it, right? And I think as an industry, we got to make sure that we're keeping that, we're really singing that song. It's like, are you going to trust someone else's work, or are you going to trust your work? And as the message to our clients, are you going to trust agentic work, or are you going to trust professional land work? And in time, that will evolve, and hopefully this next generation of landmen will have enough of that exposure as they're coming up and being taught to know, like, hey, I need to pump the brakes. I can trust but verify, and they'll develop new methods of land work, right? It'll be done a little differently. They'll rely on some agentic work, but if you still have to be required to get into the weeds so that your intuition can kick in and say, that doesn't smell right.
Yeah.
And you have to train the new generation of landmen to think critically in that way. And hopefully if we do our part, then we'll protect the integrity of what we're doing. And that's where we are now, right? We're in a big push in the company to hire new landmen, bring in trainees, like bring in a new workforce, and be very deliberate about that training, mentorship programs, all the things to kind of instill some of those like ironclad rules of doing land work, especially from the title perspective. And so that's the path we're going. I think other companies are going to do the same. They should, if they're going to be responsible stewards of what we're asked to do as field landmen. And, I'm holding out hope to a certain extent that the core of doing some of this work will be maintained, and they'll do it properly. Now, data entry, analysis of documents, keystrokes, that's all going to go away, as it should. Business evolves, you get more efficient. a modern day vehicle gets better gas mileage than a Model T, right? I mean, it's just the nature of things. We just got to find the balance somewhere in between.
Yeah. So speaking about the younger generation, you went to Tech recently, Texas Tech recently, and gave a speech. Tell us about the landscape. What are you seeing? What is this younger generation like? Are they excited? Were there a lot of people that are interested?
Yeah, two distinct responses between college student at 8 a.m. versus college student at 11 a.m. is a completely
because you
different
gave two.
animal.
You gave two. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did the 8 o'clock class, and by 8:45 they were like, okay, yeah, they were coming to life and asking some really good questions. The 11 o'clock class was a bigger class, obviously, and they were very engaged. You could tell it was really cool, man. There was a core group of them that were really interested in field land work. You know, they were interested in what's out there, how it's done, what the career really looks like. It was pretty cool. They were all juniors for the most part. Had some seniors come in just to listen. Some gentlemen that are coming on board with Dudley. They were there in class, so they just came and got to kind of hear about the business. So that was really cool. I got to meet some of them. We're excited to get them on board. But you could tell they didn't know really, like, okay, what's a field landman do? And how does a field landman work and correspond with a company person, you know, with a company in-house landman, which is largely what the program's geared toward historically. And there's no problem with that. But I spent a lot of time just talking about this is what a field landman is, what a field landman does. This is how much money a field landman makes. This is what a broker does. Like, this is how this industry works. You know what I mean? And it was good, man. I got a lot of good feedback. They were energized to ask a lot of questions. I did my best to answer them, not scare them off or confuse them or, you know, kind of just blow over the head with some things. But it was exciting, man. I mean, I told them I was in their seat 24 years ago or whatever it was. You know, hey, what's a landman? And the big message there was that you can have a great, you know, stable career in the field land business. And they took it in, and man, I've got more LinkedIn requests in the last 2 weeks. But that's exciting. It means people are going to get an opportunity to kind of learn about what we do and be exposed to the field profession. And so it was good and exciting. And the mergers on the in-house side of things present fewer opportunities. You know, there are fewer companies out there, you know, in-house, you know, operators. So they're looking for other opportunities. They're looking for opportunities in the utility business, the field, you know, service business. I explained to them we work in 7 or 8 different industries as landmen doing land work, but there are a bunch of different paths that you can take, and that's what I really wanted to share with them. And I hope they left the seminar, you know, a little more informed at least.
Yeah. Did you get a gauge on like their AI or where they're at with that?
Dude, it was, so I've got teenagers at home, right?
Okay.
And, you know, dad mode is like, I'm coming home all the time and talking to my kids like, hey, there's this thing, AI, you kind of need to understand it and use it. And you could tell it's totally like the whole thing with like, oh, my dad thinks this is cool. It's not cool.
Yeah.
Right. And so there was like, it felt kind of like that when I really said to him, like, hey guys, you need to take this seriously. And what's going to separate you, you know, in the next 5 years of your career is your ability to like embrace and adapt and utilize this technology to your advantage. And it kind of resonated. You could see some of them like took it seriously. And then I had others come after like that. They were deep into it. You could tell like they came and talked to me and that's all they wanted to talk about after class.
Okay.
I was like, hey, well, this is what I'm doing. So it's that separate. You can see some of them that have just kind of not had to deal with it and live with it. They generally know what it does and how they can play with it. But others that are really into it, you could. And it's like, and the fact is, the same thing is out there in the professional world, right? Mm-hmm. Some are adopting it, others are slower, and maybe it's just their thing or it's not their thing.
Yeah. No, I think it's hard because I'm not sure that there's any college courses that are really covering it the way they probably should.
Professor YouTube.
No, seriously. I mean, at the same time, like you're going to these college classes and I'm sure that they're talking about stuff that AI is going to be doing for people that they're not going to be doing anymore, you know? Like it's just part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's everybody's trying to adjust, you know, and figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of what we can kind of wrap up here with. What we've covered a lot of different ground. What do you feel like go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we could go deeper into any one of these things that we touched on.
I guess what I'm curious about, what do you feel like we're sitting at this kind of start of Q2. What do you think the rest of Q2 and Q3 looks like in terms of AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's for us, we're at a kind of as a business, you know, talking about putting my Dudley hat on. We're at a point in kind of a process, a deliberate process, I guess. This is one of the things I was talked about. A lot of people ask, like, what are you doing? It's not about some widget that we're building. It's about our learning process, right? And for us, you know, last Q4 of last year was like, okay, it's here. It's time to really try to start get serious about, you know, learning about how we use AI, right? So there's a lot of talk about that in Q4, and Q1 was like, all right, we're going in trainings, broke into group sessions, a lot of just baseline education, you know, on AI. Breakout groups to start talking about, okay, let's show an examples of how you can solve a problem. And, you know, you were a big part of that with helping us in, you know, our groups. And through that process, you know, went 4 months in, 3-4 months into that, then like, not to say the cream rises to the top, but your early adopters show themselves, you know, the people who really cling to it, have a real interest in how, you know, it kind of clicks with them. And we're at that point now where, you know, we've got 3 or 4 of those early adopters identified, and looking for a couple of more. We're trying to get good representation in all of our departments. Q2 and Q3 are about, all right, how do we take those people and put them in an environment where they can start actually really building and driving toward things that can solve problems that we can then push out to the organization, right? So the next few months for us are like, we've identified a couple of big things that we think are the first steps for us. You know, what tools can we build? What workflows can we automate that make us better? And for us, it's a lot of quality control oriented things. And so that's establishing the skills. It's establishing, you know, all the baseline reference material for like, what is a Landman? What is an ownership report? How should it look? What is a run sheet? How should it look? How should it reason? What should the context be? So establishing that and then starting to build some tools. And then Q3 is about, okay, we've built these tools. Now does it work throughout the company? Right. And then you adjust those resources for an Eastern States project or a Permian job or whatever. And then hopefully by Q4, we've got those products developed, polished, beta tested, and then we start pushing them into like company-wide use. And that's where the real work happens, is really rolling it out and putting it into your system so that you can have some meaningful effect, you know, meaningful results from the products that we build. And so if we go about that, our thought is like, you know, we work in quarters at Dudley, like all our initiatives are quarterly based. And so then it's a matter of like, okay, we've done these things, it's improved, what's the next thing? And then just roll it in that process. And in time we get better and more efficient, and we get more adopters and more people who are capable of building things on their own. But a lot of organization, a lot of like continued pushing for those key people in our group. And, you know, we're hoping within 6 months, we've actually developed some of the tools that we'll be able to use across the company.
Yeah.
So that's just where we are in our process, right? And I think other companies are going to go through a similar process if they do it responsibly. But that's where we are. And one thing I do know is we don't know as much as we need to know.
And what's crazy is like, this stuff moves so fast.
It does.
Like something could come out next week that's just like, oh, well, we have to change the entire strategy because
It's already happening. It's just like,
Yeah.
Well, what do you do? I mean, you can sit there googly eyed and be like, what do I do? Or you can just say, you know what? No, let's laser focus on a thing
Yeah.
and let's push to that. And through that process, we're going to learn. And then when we focus on the next thing, we'll have those learnings and we can get iteratively better.
Yeah.
You got to have your end goals in mind. Like, this is the product, like this is the thing.
Well, and that's why, I mean, I say this all the time, but when AI starts executing for you, you're not hitting keystrokes as much. You're not copying and pasting like you are with conversational AI. When an agentic AI is doing stuff for you, it requires you have to start focusing on your judgment. That's going to be the most important thing, is that you still have to decide what gets worked on. You still have to decide what's good enough. Where are we going, right? And then you have to have the discipline of focus. Because when all these things start popping up and you can go this direction and that direction, oh, I could do this, I could do that. Then you have all these like half-baked ideas that are not shipped and they're just sitting there. And you're sitting there like, well, I guess we just did a bunch of different things that didn't really go anywhere.
I got a lot of stuff at 70%.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
And we're pretty fortunate in that sense. You know, we've been programming, our land system for the last 4 years. And that was some mistakes that we made early on. I was like, we got to do this and we need to do that and we got to fix this. And you end up with a lot of modules and functionality that's half baked. Mm-hmm. And then you just got a mess and like, where do I go from here? So, we're able to take some of those learnings, like, it's easier to do things now, but you still have to be disciplined about, hey, finish what you start and really, drive to what you do and still learn, still expand your horizons and your abilities, but you can't just go chasing squirrels. What are we going to do? What are we best at? What are we best suited to build and focus on that?
Yeah.
And then, in time, you'll get better and better and you can just expand on that. Start with a little snowball, make a snowman.
Exactly. And like, you have developers on staff, but like, you don't want your senior prospect manager or whatever it is becoming a developer and managing a software tool that you know what I mean? And that's only going to kill focus, right? Because then you're missing the forest for the trees,
It will. I mean, you need them guiding the effort 100%. They need to be, this is the tool. This is why we need it. This is how it works. This is how it relates. And what AI has been able to do and Claude Code we've been able to put those people on a 2-week sprint to say, okay, this is the thing. Let's mock up visually how this would work, how it relates, and then you can build a product that you can then demo to the programming team and to a certain extent have it set up in a code base that's compatible with what you're using.
Yep.
But then say, okay, then hand that off to the team to say, all right, now build this so that it's protected, that it's secure, and that it's not just going wild. It's not buggy, and that's the way, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be how the marriage, and that's really the beauty of it actually is for years, you kind of, and software is that way. It's like, well, you just got to use what you're given and you can tell it's not built by Landman, right? And it's like, oh, well, this is the thing. And if you wanted something, well, you had to send a request and it took months or it never got built. And that's, I'm not poo-pooing on other people. That lives in our environment. It's just like, there's that communication that's lost. But now somebody can sit down and build out a workflow and build a website essentially that replicates what they want. And then hand that to the team and says, here's the picture, paint it. So really cool in that sense. And it's exciting. There's so much changing. You can very much, you can get discouraged and almost feel like it's overwhelming, but one bite at a time. And that's how the industry is going to evolve. And I think that's the disciplined way to go about it.
No, it's good. Well, it's been fun, man. I'm glad that we could record this and just kind of chit chat. Hopefully people find value in it and
little impromptu chit chat, man.
Yeah.
Winging it.
Yeah.
I didn't say many cuss words. It was great. I didn't say that many cuss words. I didn't drink. So I feel very responsible on this day.
Good for you, man. Hey, little pat on the back,
Atta boy. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we'll
Cool.
If there's, I know we addressed a lot of questions, but I know there's other questions people have. So if they do, reach
Yeah.
out to us and
Man.
we'll cover them on another episode or something.
Yeah, we could certainly do that. I mean, a lot of people are reaching out to me about random things, and I enjoy that. It's kind of a fun part of my job. So I'm sure there'll be something we can unpack in 6 months that'll make us sound like idiots, from today.
Oh yeah, this will be very outdated in 2 weeks probably. So
Yeah, no doubt. Let's publish this thing now.
yeah, exactly.
All right,
Okay.
cool.
Thanks, Brent.
Enjoyed today's topic? Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Learn more at dudley-land.com. See you next episode.